You know, I'm just thankful to God. Thankful to God. And I just want to say that, like David wrote the Psalms, you know, it's something touched me this morning, listening to some other ministers and just the Holy Spirit, you know, touching my heart. And my heart is set for this church and for them.
Thank you.
And but for the whole, because we're all God's children, is what God's word means to us. You know, it's not just singing it, reading it. You know, but when we open it up and we apply it in our lives, and that's a hard thing a lot of times, because we've all had moments we can look back at it and see that we've read this and boy, that was so great, but we didn't apply it to our heart 5 minutes later. You know, and that's my heart's desire for here, is that we learn to apply it into our hearts, you know, for love, mercy, and grace, and to love Jesus, because that's all God, the Father, as He is going to look at us in time, is that our love for Jesus. And with our love for Jesus, we'll have love for everybody, no matter who, and no matter what.
That's right.
And that's my heart's desire too, for myself, my wife, and for everyone here, is to open up our hearts. Amen.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, you know that the word, just like medicine, just like the cure, if we don't apply it, if we don't take that medicine, it's no good on the shelf. You know, it'll expire eventually for us. All right, anybody else? Okay, let's have the kids kind of make a line here, orderly fashion.
Yeah. Orderly?
19 and under. Never turned down a chance to be praying, man. All right, over here, guys, on this side. Right over here. There we go. Darren, would you mind coming up and pray for the kids today?
Lord, we just thank you so much for these kids. We thank you that you have a plan and a future for every single one of them.
Yes.
And Lord, while they're young, we pray that you would just show them your grace and mercy, that you would be able to enter their hearts and help them believe from a young age, so that when they get older, they won't stray from the path, but know which way to go. In Jesus' name.
Amen. We got a pretty good quiver full here for just getting started here, so. All right. You ready, Mr. Scott? Okay. Well, welcome again. We're going to go ahead and get into the Word here this morning. I'm going to open us up with a little bit of prayer, and then we'll get right into it. So let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, Lord, as we dig into your Word today, and we dig into this concept of who is your one, or for each one of us, who is our one, Lord, I ask that your Spirit would speak to each one of us where we're at, Lord, in our own language, in our own, just exactly what we need to hear for each one of us, Lord. Lord, we know that the Word's not mysterious, it's not tricky, it's not hard to understand, Lord, so we just ask for clarity, so we understand everything we hear and everything we read. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Okay, so one thing that we're going to do at Unhindered Church is not the normal thing. So first thing I want to do is everybody stand up, come over here, and grab the hand of your neighbor. We can make a semi-circles-ish, kids and everybody. All right, there's a point to this.
Prop it up on something. Prop it up on that water.
It's okay, just go.
All right, so what we're going to do in this circle is, you know, and for the visitors, this is for you as well, for all of us, as leaders of this church, as the people who are going to be leading the way here, moving forward. I want to take a zoomed out look at this church plant. You know, because when we're doing the day-to-day, we get so focused in on setting up a speaker or making coffee or making sure that sign is lit up just right, that we lose the sight of the big picture. And so what I want to do this morning right now is take that telescope and zoom it way out. So we're looking big picture, big picture, like the church picture type of thing, you know. So, you know, on the picture of the slide there, you know, it's a zoomed out look. That's what we want to do right now. So, as we close our eyes and pray, I want each of us to think in our minds and just pray for God's leading, that one thing we would love to see happen on your church as a result of our leadership, what would that one thing be? And pray it. As a result of my leadership, Heavenly Father, what's one thing you'd like to see happen on your church?
Father, I see those that feel like they don't belong, feel like they're outcasts, they feel like they don't have a place in this world. I pray that we'd be able to make them feel welcome, make them feel like this is their family. That's my desire, Lord. To touch people, but especially, all people, but especially those that feel like they're a little bit lost in this world and they need help.
Yes. Let's zoom out even further than that. Let's zoom out and get really zoomed out and get really specific. Let's assign numbers to things. Let's get something measurable here where we're thinking in terms of achievable goals. How many people we want to impact? How many families we want to change? How many kids we want to have midweek youth group meeting? Let's get so specific that it's measurable.
Lord, we can give you praise, Father. Lord, you know in your word it tells us how your time can come where it's going to be a great falling away, Father God. And Lord, that's what's starting to go on right now. We've even got believers that are stopped going to church for one purpose or another, Father God. Getting mad at man but they really get mad at you, Lord. So we're praying for them just to come back to the church, Lord. But most of all, Father God, for the unsaved. Because that's what we're supposed to be about. That's what we told everybody to go out and be a witness, Lord. To the world is for those that are not saved, Lord Jesus, to reach those that are broken. And so we pray that in David's name. To hear your word and feel your love, Father, throughout this church.
Yes.
In your body.
What else we'd love to see happen because as a result of our leadership of your church, something we'd love to see happen here.
Lord, I pray for the people who feel like they're zeros because they don't measure up to the way church has done the traditional bent, that they don't fit in or they're not on the right cast or clique. Lord, I just pray that you would lead those people in here, Lord, that they would find freedom in your Son, Jesus Christ, Lord, that they would be included and find out that through the lens of their intent,
Yes.
and that you are pleased with them, that you're happy with them, that their lives will be able to be picked up from worthlessness to the most worth they could possibly have within the apple of your eye, Lord. So I pray that you would help us to help them get loose the chains of all these traditions that men try to cast on us to hold us down for their vision, and that you catch your vision and let us get out of the way so that we'll be able to lift people up.
Amen. Amen. Let's continue these prayers as we get back in our seats and just have a mindset of Lord, what do you want my leadership in your church to lead to? What would be the big picture for this church through me, Lord? Let's have our seat. Thank you, everybody, for praying here. And as you continue to pray that prayer as throughout the week as you think of it, Lord, what would you have, not just in your church, what would you have me do? What would you like to see happen as a result of my leadership in my family? What would you like to see happen as a result of my leadership at my job? And apply that, because he wants to use us, not as just another cog in the chain, but as a leader to lead people. We're in desperate need of Christian leaders leading people righteously. So let me submit this to you. I know it's tough to put a number on some of the things that we mentioned in our moment over there, but let's put a number on something. You know what my big dream for this church would be? To plant 10 churches. I would love to plant 10 churches out of 100 church. All over the state, other countries, foreign. And what if we take this one step further? Put a number to your thing you'd love to see happen. Put a number on it. Let's multiply that number by 100. Now it's an unachievable goal for me. I can't do 1,000 churches in my own power. I might be able to force 10, but I could never do 1,000. And now I need God. Now it's not me anymore. I can't achieve that goal on my own. Now it's a God thing. And that's the kind of goals that God wants to put in our hearts is goals that we can't, those big visions, those huge ideas that we can't ignore and we can't do on our own. We're totally dependent on God for these things. The goal of 100 churches is to plant 1,000 churches. And I'm not saying we plant 1,000, but maybe we plant 9, and those 9 plant 36, and those 36 plant another whatever. Let me ask you this question. If right now somebody offered you $100,000 or a penny a day doubled for a month, what do you pick?
A penny a day, double per month, at the end of like 10 million, something like that.
Just short of 11 million. It does. And that's multiplication, guys. That's what the vision for our church is multiplication vision. Where we can, right on the wall it says max capacity 250 people. The most people that we can reach with this 4 walls is 250 people. If we plant 3 churches and they all have 250 people, now we're hitting 750. And then that's how we're going to reach the world for Jesus. That's how we're going to make disciples of all nations. It's not by just packing this room. It's by sending people out. It's by making this a training grounds to prepare and send. That's really my heart for Unhindered Church. And love the heck out of people while they're here, and not to just push people away. We want to keep people, but we also want to prepare people and send them out. That's a big part of what we want to do here. All right, let's take the telescope and focus it in a little bit. Let's go ahead, Dave. Let's focus in just a little bit. Who's your one? Every big dream, every big goal starts right here. If we try to start way out there with 1,000 church plants, or a midweek youth group of 300 kids, or whatever, we're going to get overwhelmed, we're going to get overmatched, and it's not going to be something we can bite off and chew. We got to start right here with one. And as today, as we dig into the Word, the title is Who is Your One? And that's all I want us to look at today is that big zoomed out picture. Let's leave that right there, zoomed out. That's future. That's coming up. That's on the horizon. But right now, let's look at our one. The secret to go ahead and leave it there. The secret to kingdom multiplication. It's not really a secret, but when you say secret, people's ears perk up. So the secret to kingdom multiplication. Anybody know who Isaiah Thomas is? Old basketball player from the 80s and 90s for the Detroit Pistons. They won 2 championships there during that time. And after his playing career was over, Isaiah Thomas was interviewed by the Basketball Almanac, a writer who wrote this Basketball Almanac, all about basketball. It's like almost a 1,000-page book, and just everything basketball. And they interviewed Isaiah Thomas, and the author asked Isaiah Thomas, he said, what's the secret to winning in the NBA? What's the secret to being a successful team? And he said that Isaiah had this grin on his face, because there was a secret. And Isaiah Thomas said, the biggest thing it takes to win in the NBA is to let somebody else be who they are. Mm-hmm. Let another guy score them. Let the other guy get the rebound. Being a team, nobody's the star, but we're all on equal ground. Mm-hmm. We're all needed for this job. He said that's the Pistons' recipe for championships in the 80s. Is some days you didn't know who was the star of the team. I mean, I'm dating myself here, but I remember the Bad Boys. That's what they were called. But it was Joe Dumars and Isaiah Thomas and John Sally and Vinny the Microwave Johnson and Mark McGuire. And who knows what night one of them would lead in scoring, one of them would lead in rebounds, one of them would lead in steals. And it was different every night. So you couldn't defend that. If you have one great player and that player gets shut down, you lose. Mm-hmm. The model of church a lot of times is one great player and everybody else is a fan. One person bringing the message and doing all the work and everything else, and everybody else just takes it in, and that's the recipe. Well, we're looking for a different recipe, where it's, I have a role, Perry has a role, Dave has a role, and every role is important. And what Isaiah Thomas said is that's how you win championships. And you know who agreed with Isaiah Thomas? Or you know who Isaiah Thomas was agreeing with? The Apostle Paul. Go ahead, David. The Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians 12, he starts out 1 Corinthians 12 and verse 1, he says something along the lines of, I don't want you to be unaware or uninformed, or I don't want you to be ignorant of this. Almost implying to Corinthians, this is a secret you don't know. This is something that you guys aren't aware of. A little known secret. And he goes on to say in verse 12, he says, for just as the body is one and has many parts, and all the parts of that body, though many, are one body, so also is Christ.
Yeah.
That whole chapter goes on to talk about the body, how the body functions, how each part is important. You know, if we were all noses, we wouldn't be a very good body. If we were all the brain, we wouldn't be a very good body. If we were all arms, we wouldn't be a very good body. So, you know, if your role is different than somebody else's, it's not because you're less important or because anything, it's because that's an important part of the body. And that chapter even goes on to talk about body parts that are less pretty, so to speak, or less desirable. You know what we do with our less desirable parts? We honor those parts and keep them covered. We take care of those parts a little more tenderly, you know? And that's the same way the church works. Is, you know, a part that feels like they're less, like a zero, like Aaron talked about, those parts get protected more, and they're valued more, and they're special. You know, you can find 100 guys willing to come up here and talk. It's the guy that's willing to come in at 6:30 and sweep the floor. That's a special piece. The guy that's willing to run a soundboard back there, that's a special piece. You know, every piece has its own special purpose. And as a team, we need to have those parts and pieces in place. You know, as we're getting going here, as a new church plant, we don't have all of our pieces yet. You know, so many of us are doing several things, and that's okay. That's what we're called to do, and that's the purpose of this time is to develop this church. But as we develop and we get a chair guy and a cleaning person, and a coffee team, and all those parts, then we're going to really start seeing God's hand in this church. You know, we're going to really start seeing each element come together. It's exciting. I'm excited to see that because, you know, that's when we'll really get to see the hand of, you know, the head of the church come, and we can all fill our role as parts and pieces. So, in a sense, we're bodybuilders. Each one of us. We're building this body. You know, we're not lift weights, but we do have to lift these speakers. So that's what we're called to be as bodybuilders. All right, David. As a follower of Christ, as a follower of Jesus, beyond our purpose as within the church of this and that, like I mentioned, we all share at least one big thing, and that's to be a disciple who makes disciples. We all have to be out telling people about Jesus. That's that multiplication thing I was talking about. You know, in John 14:12, Jesus talks about, truly I tell you, the one who believes in me will also do the works that I do, and he will also do even greater works than these because I am going to the Father. I don't think Jesus is talking about, I'm not going to probably bring somebody back to life or heal blindness in somebody with a touch. You know, if he wants me to, I sure as heck will, but I think by greater, I think maybe Jesus is talking about quantity instead of quality. Maybe he's talking about more. Because Jesus knew he wasn't going to be walking in St. Joe County in 2019, but he knew that we would be. And as we fulfill this word of Jesus to even greater works than these, you know, maybe it's the quantity that he's talking about. Maybe it's the quantity, because you know, I know some people get wrapped up in the quality, like, oh, I want to heal, I want to, you know, do this and that. And if the Lord's gifted you with those gifts, that's great. But one thing we can be is greater in terms of quantity. We can go out and share the word, the gospel with everyone. We can invite people in. We can go to people who don't know Jesus and just, you know, share a little hope. And that's what we want to do. I believe that the desire Jesus had for his disciples to multiply and do greater things is the desire that we should have as well. You know, Jesus brought in 12 and trained them up and poured his life into these 12. And Jesus didn't try to evangelize the world on his own. You know, he could have, no doubt, but he chose to use 12 guys who were going to go out and multiply and multiply and multiply. That's the recipe Jesus chose. And I think that's the recipe that a lot of churches don't use today. I think a lot of churches fill these four walls and then we're doing our part then. Well, Jesus never was content with just the big group. Jesus always was looking at the small group, and he was always discipling those guys to send them out.
Right.
When you think of Jesus, I kind of got ahead of myself. Do you think of him as the preacher to the masses or to the one-on-one guy with the disciples? You know, in the Bible, it's 3 to 1 times mentioned that Jesus was with the small group versus when he was preaching to the masses. I have some specifics here. The gospel records 46 events spent with the disciples, compared to only 17 events with the masses, almost 3 to 1. The Great Commission is one of those God-sized visions that we can't accomplish without this plan of working with a small group and send them out. Like I said, there's plenty of guys willing to talk to a big group. It's this one-on-one stuff that we really need to make our bread and butter. All right, next slide, Dave. Paul puts this into a bite-sized, doable portion for us. Paul does that with everything. He puts it into a really solid, rememberable thing. In 2 Timothy 2, 1 through 3 says, "You therefore, my son, be strong in the grace that is in Christ Jesus. What you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, commit to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. And sharing the suffering is a good shoulder of Jesus Christ." Each one of us shares this good news of Jesus to faithful people who will in turn share. He's talking like 4 generations of people right here in one verse. He tells us, we tell faithful people, they tell their friends. That's 4 lines right there. And that's what we got to be looking at. As Unhindered Church, we want to be those people that are reaching out to, and just to tell one person who may in turn tell somebody else. All of our faith right now, all of us in this room right now are here because somebody was faithful enough to tell us about the good news.
Amen.
In one way or another, it happened somewhere along the lines, and maybe we can't pinpoint it right this second, but somebody said, "Sherry, I want to tell you about Jesus." And it stuck. Those seeds planted. Those seeds took root in our lives. And that's all. I think that's our number one call is to be a seed planter. Just to tell somebody. Let's magnify this in right now. So we started a big picture. We zoomed in a little bit. Let's really get magnified here, small, really small. Are we reproducing and multiplying other followers of Christ, who in turn do likewise? Is that something we are doing? Not always. Sometimes. Probably less often than I should. But is that something that we could do in this moment? As we leave here today, as we go through our week, we can take somebody under our wing and say, "Hey man, I want to be buddies," with the motive of telling them about Jesus. That's what you do. That's okay. I mean, that's not a bad thing to have a plan behind a purpose behind your plans here. John 3:22. Go ahead, Dave. After this, Jesus and his disciples went to Judea. Let's read this one slow because you almost don't even notice it when you read in the Bible. After this, Jesus and his disciples went to the Judean countryside, where he spent time with them and baptized. Jesus just spent time with the disciples. That's all he did. Just went there and spent time with them. The word spend time in the Greek is diatribo. And transliterated, diatribo, dia means against, tribo means rub off. So diatribo, spend time with, literally is talking about rubbing off on each other. Jesus just wanted to get together and rub off on these guys. He just wanted